there's going to be unexpected events, and you need to have enough time to be able to deal with that aspect. One of the ways we can deal with that is by having the things that we can prepare in advance done. So whether it's, having everything set up in the calf shed, your tags ordered, your milking parlour serviced, having, scrapers and everything serviced, as many things as you can done beforehand.
Hello, I'm Emma-Louise Coffey, and you're welcome to the Dairy Edge, the Teagasc Dairy podcast. We're bringing you the latest information, insights and opinion to improve dairy farm performance. It's a new year and weeks out from spring calving. We caught up with Marion Beecher to discuss a recent case study of dairy farmers who achieve an average 8-hour working day across the farming year.
So that study was part of a wider study, and this was just 4 case study farms that we looked at. And when we break it down, we look at the labour input contributed by the farmer and the family accounts for almost 80% of the total workload. And then I suppose the choice is then for the individual farmer to choose whether they use contractors or hired workers or a mixture of both to make up that shortfall. And then when we look at it even further, we see that the farmer had an average working day of about almost 8 hours per day for the year. So that's really comparable, I guess, to other industries and sectors, and even for those who are working as paid employees. So despite farmers being, I suppose, self-employed. And then I suppose the other thing was, when we interviewed those 4 farmers, and when we asked them, what kind of was prioritizing or what was driving their interest and their achievement of labour efficiency and achieving that 55-hour work week, all of them were absolutely adamant that the seasonal compact calving system was key to them achieving that, provided that the other elements, such as having more people, other people, so the contractors, family, or hired workers, the facilities, the technologies and practices were in place.
And that number in terms of 8 hours per day is a really interesting one, Marion, because the perception is that we work day and night on farms. So, I suppose, how is that different? Like you mentioned compact calving, but I suppose the working day, what does it look like?
Yeah, and I suppose that's a really important point. It does vary throughout the year. And, obviously in springtime, the days can be longer, but equally when we look a lot of the studies that we've done to date, there's still huge flexibility within the working day. So a recent study by Conor Hogan would have seen that farmers in the springtime were able to take up to about 4 hours per day off during the day for other activities. So they may have started early and finished relatively late, but they would have had breaks during the day as well. So I suppose it's important to note that. And then I suppose when we look at it throughout the year, it can reduce down. So like if we think about in late November, December, January, when their spring calving systems are traditionally, cows are dried off, the workday can be much shorter at that stage as well.
Also, you mentioned family farm labour and the contribution of the family. What sort of tasks do you typically see family contributing to the overall picture?
And I suppose, again, it's very varied on the individual farm. But when we look at, I suppose, the case study farms that we had in this study, so those 4 farms, it varied from one farm having an uncle who really enjoyed doing some of the contracting pieces, so bringing the bales during the summer period, and helping move cattle or cows now and then, to another farm where the farmer's partner would help out with the calf rearing during springtime. And I think 2 out of the 4 farms had children who would have helped out again with the calf rearing during springtime as well. So it varies, but generally you're looking at, I suppose, some milking tasks, calf rearing to a large degree, and then perhaps some admin tasks as well.
And it's a really interesting one because often when there's succession on farms and the next generation I suppose is the main labour unit. People often talk about their parents and, if they go away for a break for a couple of days, the amount of work or the extra work that needs to be done because they're not there, and it's a lot of unseen work. And I suppose in those instances, it's really appreciated.
Exactly, and that's it. And like, I didn't actually mention that one of the other farms had a father who would help out and who loved doing, bits of repairs and maintenance jobs, whereas the farmer who had taken over hated those jobs and would have gotten somebody in to do them, but instead his father was there and was happy to repair the odd shoot here and there, or do jobs like going to the co-op to pick up certain things, or going down to the vet to pick up other things and vaccines, etc. So there's no shortage of work on a dairy farm, so there's loads of things that could be, there's a role for everybody, I think.
For sure. And again, to come back to that headline figure of 55 hours per week, if I've done the sums right, that's 3,000 hours per year or 24 hours per cow. So on those four case study farms you've looked at, where do they lie in terms of, I suppose, their labour efficiency relative to, your top, average, or bottom farm on labour efficiency?
Two of those farms came from a study that was completed by Justine Deming and Bernie O'Brien back in about 2017. And so they were the farms that we had full year-long data for. And those farms would be representative of basically your average farm within that cohort. And that study looked specifically at farms that were labour efficient, or they asked advisors to nominate clients who they deemed as labour efficient. And I said they ranged within in pretty much the average. So there was a range from about 13 hours per cow per year up to about almost 40 hours per cow per year in that study. So the farmers in this current study, so these four farms were coming out as the average. So quite good. So I suppose it just highlights that this can be done on farms, and there is huge scope for farmers who may have a longer working week to improve if they so wish.
And to come then specifically to target areas, obviously you mentioned there's always a bit of room for improvement, but within this, I know there was a couple of areas identified: farm facilities, work practices, technologies, and work organisation. And maybe to look to farm facilities first, one or two things that stuck out that will, I suppose, work towards labour efficiency or not.
Yeah, so one of the things is around, I suppose, the milking facilities, because I suppose milking, accounts for, just over a third of the overall working year. So anything that you can do to improve that is going to make a huge difference on your overall efficiency. And I suppose the ideal in that scenario is to have less than 8 rows per cow, ideally 7 or 8 rows of cows per milking. So I suppose that's kind of the target, and having that will make a huge difference. And I suppose one of the other areas is around the calving, because again, or calf rearing, because again, in a seasonal system, that's the second most time consuming task on a farm. And actually having, a purpose built calf shed, ideally one, but perhaps even, just two calf sheds, where you might, some farmers might prefer to keep the calves that they're selling in a separate shed. So, minimal number of calf sheds is ideal, because I suppose that way you're minimizing your traveling, whether it's walking or whatever, between sheds, and transporting of milk if you don't have an automatic calf feeder.
And then to work practices, Marion.
Yeah, so one of the things there that came out in terms of for this case study farms was the around, I suppose, the cow care task, which again would be one of the third, I think is around the third most time consuming task in a spring farm, is around having group calving pens. So, having not having individual cows in calving pens, so having a group pen can make a huge difference. And as well as that is minimizing, hand scraping of passages or yards, etc.
And then to technologies.
Yeah, so again, there's a huge range of things there. And if we again look at the case study farms that we looked at, and which would be seen in all the studies that we've done, is the use of, I suppose, automatic calf feeders, and then also the use of automatic heat detection for cows, so the use of, collars, and then a lot of the milking stuff, so around the use of ACRs, dump lines, drafting facilities can make a huge difference on farms.
And interesting, you mentioned the heat detection, the automation with collars. A lot of farms that I've been on in the last year who have invested in the technology have mentioned, I suppose, outside of heat detection, the overall health monitoring of the cows and, picking up a cow that might be, on the way to getting sick in advance, and therefore, I suppose, eliminating the problem and eliminating the time spent with treatment and calling out the vet. I'm not sure if that's something that you observed in this study, Marion.
We didn't look at that, Emma-Louise, but it's a really good point, and I think there is a research study that will be starting looking at the effectiveness of those technologies, those key collars or the collars to be able to pick up health issues. But I think it's a really important point to make, that I suppose it can be a really useful way, if you've got somebody coming in and working on your farm that may not be as up to speed with your own individual cows, that this could be an extra additional thing that could be used to, I suppose, help manage those cows. So, the person coming in mightn't be sure if she a bit lame, is she not, or is she a bit, is she getting sick or is she not? And then they've got the backup, I suppose, of being able to look at the data, to see, are they right or are they wrong as well. So I suppose it gives an extra set of flexibility, I suppose, to the farmer, that they can, I suppose, maybe have a bit more freedom in terms of taking a bit more time away from the farm as well, hopefully.
And finally, then, Marion, work organisation. Any of the top things that farmers are finding labour efficient in this category?
Yeah, so a lot of things here. One of the main things would be around, having a set evening finish time. So setting it at, 6, 5 o'clock, whatever it is, whatever suits the farm and the farmer. So having a structure around the working day, and actually completing fewer tasks, or I suppose not jumping between tasks ideally during the day, and also completing office work in the morning and doing it regularly as well.
In the coming weeks, the busiest period of time, as you've acknowledged it, in seasonal compact calving systems, is upon us. And farmers will be in it in the next couple of weeks. Can you give us your top tips for, what people can do between now and the onset of calving to make sure they're set up as best as possible?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is, 2023 has been an extremely tough year in many ways. And I think, one of the best things we could do is look after ourselves. So, taking it easy, resting as much as we can, going to the doctor for a checkup, getting a break when you can, is going to be hugely important. And then I think the next thing is around, preparing as much as you can in advance. Obviously, you mightn't be able to do everything, but by doing that, it'll allow you the time, or allow people the time to deal with that unexpected event, because there will be unexpected events, whether it's a weather event, whether it's a down cow, a sick cow, something else happening completely off the farm. Um, there's going to be unexpected events, and you need to have enough time to be able to deal with that aspect. And we can do, one of the ways we can deal with that is by having the things that we can prepare in advance done. So whether it's, having everything set up in the calf shed, your tags ordered, your milking parlour serviced, having, scrapers and everything serviced, as many things as you can done beforehand. And then I think the next thing to look at is, okay, is there anything from spring 2023 that didn't work so well that we could do differently this spring? whether that's, making small changes to how milk is transported, or, investing in a refractometer to test the colostrum, whatever it is, being able to review and put things in place to make things, I suppose, a little bit easier this year, I think will benefit everybody. And then I suppose finally it's making sure that you have enough people where possible in place, so that you have, enough work, that you have all the work covered, again, where possible. So, maybe you would have always had a worker and that person's unavailable, so you might need to get a contractor in to spread some of the fertilizer or a bit more of the slurry or whatever it is. So to look at alternatives as well.
I think that's a good note to finish on, and some good pointers to get us off on the right foot. And I think that the first thing, looking after ourselves, so the research shows that the farmer is I suppose, primary provider of labour on the farm, and they need to be right in order to make sure everything is humming for the calving season. Thank you, Marion.
Thank you, Emma-Louise.
That's it for this week's episode of the Dairy Edge podcast, and my thanks to Marion Beecher for joining me on this week's show. Don't forget to rate, review, and listen on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And for more information, go to the Teagasc website at teagasc.ie. I'm Emma-Louise Coffey, and join me next time for your Dairy Edge.